Good afternoon. I am back for another ride. It's 12:40 p.m. on July 4th, Sunday, July 4th. It's 75 degrees here in North Cape May, and I am starting this ride in the North Cape May Shopping Center. I'm going to take a ride over to Cape May. I haven't been recording any rides in the last couple of weeks, simply because I felt like I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover. But I thought I would take this opportunity for this ride today to make one more video, at least one more video, and sort of share some of my reflections on the post-pandemic effects that I'm witnessing in Cape May and surrounding areas. So that's what I thought I would talk about on this ride. The ride itself is going to be scenery that I've shown many times, so there will be nothing new from that perspective. But it's still worth seeing for anyone that enjoys Cape May. It's still worth seeing town on the holiday, July 4th. Excuse me. So, what I wanted to sort of talk about was the lingering effect of the pandemic, and specifically the labor shortage that I've referred to. On previous videos, I talked about how virtually every business that you see down here has a Help Wanted sign on its door or in its window. But the most visible impacts to any visitor would be in the restaurants, since this is a hospitality economy, and the effects of this labor shortage are really becoming evident. And I'll share what I mean by that. I think anybody that has followed or watched any of my previous videos knows that I'm a big fan of the business community down here and how resilient they have been in dealing with this pandemic and the government-imposed lockdowns of their businesses and what they've had to do to survive. Many of them haven't survived. And now that they are free to fill their restaurants up again, with the capacity limitations being lifted by the governor of New Jersey, they're finding an inability to staff their establishments. And it's happening across, all these restaurants, and I'll share a couple of examples of what I'm talking about in no particular order of importance. But my wife and I went to sort of a local pizzeria in North Cape May about a week and a half ago to pick up a pizza to bring home. And in this pizzeria there is a dining room for people that wanted to go in and sit down and have something other than pizza. And I've gotten to know the owner of this place over the past 15 years. So I asked him why the dining room was still shut down and not open for business. Because all the capacity limitations have been lifted. And he said the reason it's not open is he cannot find any servers willing to work. And he said that some of the large employers in the area in an effort to attract staff and workers, are now offering $17 an hour starting salary for high school kids. And he basically indicated that to compete with that, it's going to drive him out of business. So he's chosen to just keep his dining room shut down. Excuse me. He's chosen to just keep his dining room shut down and just basically operate as a takeout pizzeria. Another impact, we went into another restaurant that was sort of like sort of like a pub kind of an establishment. And we went in there with my daughter, son-in-law, and grandkids. And we placed our order. We ordered drinks for the adults. And then we ordered appetizers. And then we ordered our entrees. And the drinks came, pretty quickly and were served to us. And it was a bit of a wait for the rest of the food to come. But when it did come, they brought the appetizers out to the table with the entrees. Literally carried them all and put them all on the table in front of us at the exact same moment. So the server that was sort of taking care of our table asked if there was anything else, and I don't want to complain or anything, but I said, look, I would prefer that the entrees not have been brought to the table along with the appetizers. The idea of the appetizer is, to have it before the entree, and that's why it's separated on the menu. The person was very accommodating, and they quickly took the entrees off the table, took it back into the kitchen, and I'm certain all they did was sit the entrees on a table someplace, and 15 minutes later, they stuck them in a microwave to nuke them and make them hot and bring them back to the table. Well, some of the entrees were sort of dried out from doing that, and really was not a very good experience. And the last example that I'll share was the worst of these examples. We went into a restaurant, and I'm not naming any names on these restaurants because I really do not want to criticize in any way specific businesses. That's not my intent, and I think these business owners of these restaurants are trying to manage through a business environment that no one has ever faced before. And this acute labor shortage, there's a lot of sort of thoughts as to what is causing that. And I'm not going to get into that, I'd rather not, but it is what it is. There is a labor shortage, and there's no denying that fact. And in fact, it exists everywhere. It exists up in the community that we live in Pennsylvania as well. But it's particularly acute here because this is a seasonal economy and a hospitality industry. So right at the time that the capacity limitations were lifted, and these businesses were free to fill their restaurants up, demand surged because lots of people are getting out of their house and coming back to the shore. They didn't do it last year, and I think we're seeing a significant volume of tourists, which is good for business, but the restaurants have not been able to hire staff. So anyway, this restaurant that we went into a few nights ago, we we went in and we ordered, this was a BYO, so we didn't order any drinks, but we ordered appetizers and we ordered entrees, and we gave our bottle of wine to the server to open the wine for us. And the server came back to our table a few minutes later, almost in tears, telling us that this was only her third day on the job and this was her first attempt at opening a bottle of wine. And the cork of the wine had fallen into the bottle and was floating around, or pieces of the cork were floating around in the wine, and she couldn't have been more apologetic and was visibly shaken and apologized profusely. And of course, you know, anybody can make a mistake, so we really downplayed that. And we placed our orders for our entrees, and two of my grandkids got a slice of pizza and an order of French fries. And when they brought those to the table, they were both cold to the touch. The pizza was not just not warm, it was literally like it was taken out of a refrigerator. Same thing with the French fries. They were cold to the touch. So we told the server. She apologized again, explaining that the kitchen was very short-staffed, and she took them back, and I'm sure she put them in a microwave to heat them up, and then brought them back. And it was for little kids, so I didn't really make any big deal out of it. My wife ordered spaghetti aglio, which is spaghetti in garlic and oil. And she asked if they could add a couple of shrimp to that. And the server said, of course, and wrote that down. And when the food was brought to the table, there was no shrimp in the spaghetti aglio that my wife ordered. So my wife pointed that out, and the server again was very apologetic and said, let me go back to the kitchen and ask them to heat up a few pieces of shrimp and I'll bring it back. And we said, no, never mind, forget it, just don't charge me for the added shrimp. So that was my wife's order. My daughter ordered shrimp scampi, and when they brought the food to the table for everybody else, the entrees, they did not have anything for my daughter. And the server once again apologized profusely and said that another server took my daughter's order of shrimp scampi that was waiting to be picked up with our food. So we literally had to eat our meal while my daughter sat there with nothing in front of her until the end of the meal. And they brought her shrimp scampi out, and she basically ate alone while the rest of us were just sitting around watching her. And then lastly, I ordered for my meal spaghetti bolognese, and I asked if they could bring some Parmesan cheese to sprinkle on top of it, and some hot cherry pepper flakes to spice it up. And of course the server said, of course, no problem with that. And I'm at the Cove, by the way. You can see the crowd here. So they brought my food to the table and did not bring any Parmesan cheese or red pepper flakes. So I asked about it again when they brought the food to the table, and she said, sure, let me get it. And she finally brought it back to the table when she brought the check to the table. In other words, our meal was over. The food was eaten, so there was no utility to bring in the cheese and the hot pepper flakes at that point. Now, these are all sort of minor things, but cumulatively they start to add up and make for a less than enjoyable dining experience. And the last thing that I'll mention is my grandkids. Well, I should say we went back to this place a couple of days later, not wanting to write it off because of this one bad experience with a brand new server that was obviously not trained well. And when we went back a couple of days later, my grandkids ordered the exact same thing that they did on the evening that I'm telling you about. And at the end of that meal, a different server that we had the second time came back to the table at the time of asking us if we wanted dessert, and we did. And she informed us that the kids get a complimentary dessert. Now, the server from a few nights prior to that either did not know that or neglected to tell us that, and we ordered a dessert for them and paid for a dessert for them. So I think what this really means is that this server, which by her own words at the start of the experience was on her third day of employment, that these restaurants are so hurting for staff that they're hiring people and they're not getting adequately trained, and they're being thrown on the job. And it's just they're trying to make do under very difficult circumstances with a very severe and acute labor shortage, and it is affecting the quality of the dining experience. And I am extremely sympathetic to the plight of these businesses, as I have talked about on numerous previous videos. And I certainly do not hold anything against the server, who it's not her fault that she's not trained. In fact, we felt so bad for the server that we left her an actual much larger tip than the typical 20%. And at one point, my wife got up and actually hugged the woman because it appeared that she was about to have a nervous breakdown. And my wife tried to comfort her and stood up and hugged her and told her to calm down, and we'll get through all this, and she'll get beyond this period. But at the end of the day, it's really not the customer's problem that these restaurants are facing this labor shortage, and it shouldn't fall on the customers to pay a very handsome price for a good meal that is it is not prepared properly or timely or served properly. So I think what some restaurants are doing, because they had such an abysmal 2020 and took such losses, is with the capacity limitations lifted, they're filling their restaurants up to capacity, whether or not they have the internal staff to handle that capacity. And as a result, you go out and you're paying higher prices, and you're dealing with understaffed places and undertrained staff. And it's true in the back of the house and the front of the house. It's not just a front of the house problem. As a matter of fact, my wife and I went to another one of our favorite fine dining restaurants, which I've mentioned before on videos. And this fine dining place is rather expensive, and the meal was fine, and the service was fine. Everything really about that meal I have no complaints about. But I was talking to the hostess, and who we have gotten to know over the years, and she came to our table and was talking to us about, the whole pandemic and things like that. And she said that the labor shortage is so bad and it's affecting all businesses. And if I looked around, I would see a visible sign of it in their restaurant. And basically what she was pointing out to me was all of the interior of this fine dining establishment was the decor was basically white. White tablecloths, white walls, everything was white, and it was very pristine, except the napkins on the table were black. And she said the reason that they don't have their normal white tablecloths is that the linen company that they deal with does not have adequate staff to handle the business in the summer down here. So they have to start mixing and adding other colored tablecloths. Now the tablecloths are the same quality and they're clean, and everything is presented fine. So it doesn't really affect in an adverse way your dining experience, but it just shows that even sort of suppliers to the restaurants, like a linen company, is faced with these labor shortages. And you can see I'm driving down Beach Drive, and it is jam-packed here in Cape May. I went down to the cove, and I think I'm going to go up all the way to Poverty Beach. So I think what has to happen is that the burden has to fall on some of these owners of excuse me, the owners of some of these restaurants to limit their capacity based on their staffing capacity. If they don't have the staff to handle a full house, they should not book a full house. And you can also, another broad manifestation of this labor shortage is that even on the 4th of July weekend, I was talking to some people that work in a restaurant, and many of the restaurants here are still only open 3 or 4 days a week, even though we're through the month of June, and we're literally at the 4th of July holiday, and they're still not open 7 days a week. And it's not because there's not demand down here. I mean, you can see for yourself on this video, even though I'm not talking about the crowds, you can see that it's a good crowd here in Cape May on the 4th of July, and it's beautiful weather. And it's the height of the season, and these are seasonal businesses that really only have 3 months to make their money for the year. And despite that, they're still only operating 3 or 4 days a week. So, even though the pandemic is, for the most part, behind us down here in Cape May County, the mask mandates have been lifted. I think anybody who wants a vaccine has a vaccine. I talked on a previous video about the number of new cases that are happening here and in the whole county, and it's very few. I mean, you can count on one hand the number of new cases, and the numbers by township, like in Cape May and Cape May Point, they were 0 the last time I looked. So I think the pandemic and coronavirus is really somewhat behind us, but the lingering effects are very, very evident. And I think people coming down here should set their expectations accordingly for this summer. Do not expect restaurants to be open 7 days a week, and book your reservations as early as you can for dining, because they will fill up rapidly. And when you go, have patience and understand that particularly at a casual dining establishment, you're dealing with establishments that are almost universally understaffed, and the staff that they do have are undertrained. And it is what it is. I think you just have to be patient and not blame the staff, the servers, the people in the kitchen. They're doing the best they can. If there is a blame to be assigned to anybody, the only person I think it can be assigned to would be the owners of these places, because they just they should be mindful of the damage that sacrificing quality could have on their goodwill with their customers and their brand. So that's it. That's it for this video. I'm up to Poverty Beach. I will pull over and stop this video as soon as I get a chance, and record a separate video on the way back, as I always do. It is really a beautiful day today. My daughter and son-in-law and grandkids go home tomorrow. They were on vacation last week and on vacation tomorrow, so they're staying through the night tonight, and they will be back again in August. I should point out that one of the days this week when it was complete rain, they did an activity that I suggested on my video would be good for a rainy day activity, and they went over to the the U.S. Naval Air Station in Wildwood Air Museum, and they spent a couple of hours in there and thoroughly enjoyed it. So the kids had a blast, and my daughter and son-in-law enjoyed it as well. So I think that was just sort of further evidence that is a good thing to keep in mind. It's something to do on a rainy day if you're down here and it's just not a beach day, and you're looking for something to do indoors with kids. That's something to keep in mind. So I think I will end this video here. and I'll make another video just recording the ride home as I always do. Thank you for watching. If you have, take care.